Hey everybody, this is Mr. Maupin coming at you with another APUSH video, coming at you with topic 5.8. This is our fourth video in this series, taking a look at the military conflict in the Civil War. And when we last left off, we talked about early Union struggles in the Eastern Theater for Lincoln, trying to find a general that can actually stand up to Robert E. Lee. Although there will be the ability to thwart Lee's invasion of the North at the Battle of Antietam, which is going to give Lincoln some political cover to press for what's going to be the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, taking a step away from some of the day-to-day battle stuff, it is important that we take a look at the attempts to try to include foreign affairs as it pertains to the Civil War. Remember, once again, the South is banking on getting some type of foreign aid. The idea being is that, the South believed that Southern cotton was in such high demand that other nations would intervene on the South's behalf to help aid them in their desire to become independent and thereby, continuing to have access to Southern cotton. What the South needed was, a major victory, some major event, kind of serve as like a Civil War version of Saratoga, if you will. But it's not really going to materialize for the South. It's going to be very difficult. One of the things that's going to be kind of standing in the way of it, at least initially, is what's going to be known as the Trent Affair. And the Trent involved in a British ship that was carrying two Confederate envoys that were trying to make their way to Britain to try to secure diplomatic recognition, some military aid, financial aid, stuff like that. Well, the USS San Jacinto, realized that these two Confederates were on this British ship, and they stopped the British ship and went on board and actually, captured and took these two Confederate envoys. And this was a bit of a scandal because it was seen as America, basically targeting the sovereignty / neutrality of a British ship. There was concern there for a little while that this might serve as a instigation for the British declaring war on the United States and serving as an ally to the Confederacy. And certainly the Confederacy was hoping for that to play out. But after several heated weeks, Lincoln will, decide that, the better course of action would be to release these envoys. Not that the U.S. is going to, disclose an apology or anything, but to release these envoys and just kind of send the message that, hey, the United States is, not going to just look the other way when it comes to the Confederacy trying to get foreign aid. Now, the British will be aiding the Confederacy to some degree by building some warships for them. But at the end of the day, the South is not going to be able to get that foreign aid that they so desperately needed. And one of the reasons why is, as we've said before, the South really, at the end of the day, didn't truly have a monopoly on international cotton. The British, for example, are going to be able to find access to cotton in India and in Egypt. And so the South's cotton was not as, necessary, and therefore not really needed to be able to, that foreign countries would not necessarily need to be intervening to get access to that cotton. As we said before, Lee was really trying to score victory at Antietam and kind of make it the Confederate version of Saratoga to get that aid. But when Lee couldn't deliver on that, that's really going to make, foreign countries think that, maybe the South can't, really pull this thing off. And really the last thing at the end of the day, and I think this is really the nail in the coffin in terms of the South being able to secure any kind of foreign aid, is that, starting with January 1st, 1863, when Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation, which will immediately emancipate all slaves held in southern seceding states, and that the U.S. military would, emancipate those slaves that had been captured in battle, it changes the tenor of really what this war is all about. And it goes from a war of keeping the Union together to now truly being a war of ending slavery. That's become truly a moral war. And once that's been asserted, countries like Britain and France, who had long since abolished slavery, and they, and their governments had found it repugnant, really, they didn't want to be seen as intervening for the purpose of helping a group of territories become independent for the primary purpose of promoting what is really an evil institution. So the South is not going to be able to secure that foreign aid, and that is going to be a devastating blow. Because the South does not have the same amount of money as the North. It doesn't have the ability to produce goods like the North can. It doesn't have the infrastructure that the North has. It doesn't have the troop levels that the North has. And so the South was banking on this, and it does not materialize. And this is going to prove devastating over the next couple years. Anyhow, with that being said, let's get back to the battlefield. And as we move into 1863, this is when we're going to be seeing really a turning of the tide in the war. Early on, as we said earlier, Union forces were not doing a very good job in Virginia. General after general, be it McClellan, be it Burnside, be it, Pope, whoever, they're just getting outclassed by Robert E. Lee time and again. And yes, Grant is securing some important victories out west. It's still being overshadowed by, closer to the nation's capital, that Lee just seems unstoppable, that he's almost like, the next version of Hannibal or something like that. And that's going to continue into, 1863 to some extent. Following the loss at Fredericksburg, Lincoln's going to fire Burnside and bring in a new general to try to take on Lee. And this is Fightin' Joe Hooker right here. Once again, Hooker, kind of like Burnside and Pope, believed that, yes, they could do a very aggressive assault on Lee and stop him and then go take Richmond. And this is going to lead to Union forces and Confederate forces meeting at the Battle of Chancellorsville down here. And just like we'd seen before at Fredericksburg, just like we had seen before at, the 7 Days Battle, you name it, Lee comes out on top. Union forces get defeated again. And just like, his predecessors like Burnside and McClellan and Pope, Hooker is canned as well. So once again, Lincoln just cannot find a general for the life of him that can seem to stop Lee. And until that happens, the South still has a sense that they can win this thing. And Lincoln is very nervous. Lincoln knows that the Union cannot win this until they can find somebody that can stand up to Lee. Now, even though Chancellorsville is going to be a victory for Lee, it is going to be a blow for the Confederacy to a certain degree, because in the midst of the battle, Stonewall Jackson, who was an acclaimed officer going back to the first Battle of Bull Run, will be wounded from friendly fire and will die about a week later from complications regarding those wounds. So that was a bit of a devastating blow to the morale of the Confederacy. One of their most beloved officers is now gone. Now, as we're getting into 1863, we are really starting to see the difference in access to resources really starting to have an impact. Once again, normally we think of the home turf team in a war having the advantage of drawing out the war longer, but in this case, it actually was the opposite. The South, because it did not have the access to resources like the North did, the longer this war draws out, the worse it's going to be for the South. And as we start to see some victories militarily in the West, you're starting to see, for example, slaves becoming emancipated. You are seeing a loss of property. You are seeing, cotton fields being burned. You are seeing, businesses going belly up in the South. And so, there's this dwindling of funds, dwindling of resources. You are, losing soldiers. The South cannot resupply wounded or killed soldiers like the North can. And it's now by 1863 starting to become apparent that this is a problem for the South. Yes, they're winning in Virginia. Yes, Lee looks unstoppable, but they're starting to realize, there are some long, big-term things here that are going to be problematic, and it's only going to get worse from there. Now, to round it out for this video, we're going to take a look at two key turning point battles in 1863. The first one's going to be taking place at Vicksburg in Mississippi. Let's get to that map. There it is. Vicksburg is located right here on the Mississippi River, and by the time we get to the summer of 1863, this was basically the last holdout on the Mississippi for Confederate forces. We had seen Grant come down from the north. We talked about, for example, Farragut taking New Orleans and Union forces moving northward from there. And so Vicksburg was the last major location holding out. And what General Grant decides to do is to not do a full frontal assault to take out the city of Vicksburg, but decides to engage in what is a siege. A siege is when a military force surrounds a location, be it a castle, be it a city, whatever, and they basically starve that location of food and medicine and resources so that eventually over time that location will surrender. It's done in a way to minimize casualties for the invaders, and that's what Grant's going to be doing in Vicksburg, and it will prove very effective. Over the course of several weeks, Vicksburg is not going to be able to get access to food and medicine. People are going to start to get sick. Disease is going to start to spread. People are going to be starving. Vicksburg, which had been kind of this southern jewel of a city because of the cotton industry, was now looking like just a mess. Civil disorder was breaking down in the city. I mean, there's stories of people in the streets eating horses, eating rats. Stories of the fine ladies of Vicksburg, getting in fistfights over the remaining loaves of bread. It really becomes a mess in Vicksburg. And when Vicksburg does surrender as a result of the siege, Grant's going to have a major victory that is going to allow the Union Army to control the Mississippi River, which that then allows for the first kind of divide and conquer part of the plan to go into effect. We now see, the Western Confederacy now separated from the rest of it. Then we will see, and we'll talk next time, about how Grant will then move his forces into eastern Tennessee to try to begin what's going to be another attempt at dividing the South, which will eventually be breaking the back of Georgia, but we'll get to that later. To round it out for today, the last battle we'll take a look at is probably the most famous battle of the Civil War, and certainly the deadliest, and that is going to be the Battle of Gettysburg, which is going to be taking place right after Vicksburg surrenders in the summer of 1863. And basically what happens is that Lee, once again, in an attempt to try to get a major victory in the North, to try to secure some foreign aid, decides to invade into Pennsylvania, and we'll see him come into contact with Union forces at Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. Now, Gettysburg is going to be the bloodiest battle of the entire war. In this 3-day battle, we're going to be seeing approximately 50,000 casualties happen. Once again, that's 50,000 soldiers that are either going to be killed or wounded in this battle. And you can see here, I mean, this was just horrific. The amount of death and destruction. Once again, it's that Napoleonic style that is just going to massacre soldiers on an open battlefield. Of course, we also know, that the infamous Pickett's Charge in this battle is a last-ditch effort to try to save the Confederate advance, but it does not play out. Even though this will be a horrifically bloody battle, Union forces will come out on top. And just like in Antietam a year before, Lee is going to be vanquished north of the Potomac, and Lee once again will have to retreat back into Virginia. Now, that doesn't mean that Lee is done. Lee has proven that he can't seem to win north of the Potomac, but he looks like he can't lose south of the Potomac. So Lincoln's still looking for the guy that can try to take on Lee. And if you've been paying attention, you should have some idea of eventually who Lincoln's going to be turning to. But anyhow, that's 1863. Key turning point in the war. We'll see you next time.